Once you've been playing Albion Online for a while, you might find yourself looking for dungeons to explore. When it's time to smash some mobs and open some treasure chests, this video will give you some idea about what dungeon options are available. We'll start with expeditions. These can be a great way to earn combat fame and daily challenge points, and you'll get some silver in the bargain. Plus, the first expedition you run each day will get you a royal sigil upon completion. If you're not sure what royal sigils are for, check out my video, What Do I Do with Royal Sigils? Each expedition is like an instanced dungeon. You, or your party, are the only players in the entire zone, and you get a fresh set of mobs to battle. There are several pre-designed expeditions you might encounter, such as Fishy Business or Three Sisters, and the one you receive will be random each time. Almost every town and city in Albion has an expedition portal. This is the giant blue dimensional portal that's constantly being powered and held open by a couple of mages. The portal is usually near the bank, and if you open your zone map with the N key, you can easily spot the big blue portal icon on the map. Simply click the portal or the expedition master, the dude with the banner, to interact. Now in the starter towns, that is, towns whose names end in cross, the expedition portal only allows individual Tier 3 expeditions. But in the major cities of Bridgewatch, Fort Sterling, Limhurst, Martlock, and Thetford, and also in Caerleon, you can choose the level of expedition you want to run, from Tier 3 to Tier 6. Some levels have a minimum item power requirement, so they may not be available to you until you upgrade your gear. To find out your average item power, open your inventory and then click the left arrow at the top. Your average item power is listed at the top of your stats. The expedition interface also has a separate tab on the right-hand side that lets you launch group expeditions. If you don't have a full party, you'll go into a queue to find the other party members automatically, and you may have to wait a while even if you're a healer. But if you gather a full party first, your expedition will begin immediately. Okay, next let's talk about random dungeons, sometimes called RDs or RDGs. If you happen to join a faction, these can be a great way to earn faction rep. But keep in mind, if you're in a faction, you're fair game anywhere in the world, and you can be killed and looted. But if you're not in a faction, then you'll be safe from players in any random dungeon in a blue zone, and mostly safe from players in yellow zone random dungeons. They can knock you down, but not kill or loot you. So what is a random dungeon? Unlike expeditions, the location and map in a random dungeon is procedurally generated. It can be a little different every time you run it. Every random dungeon contains mobs, bosses, and treasure chests which you won't find in an expedition. You might get a random dungeon with only one floor, but they can have as many as 3 levels. You might find mostly green chests with a blue chest at the end, or you might get lucky and find a purple, or even rarely an orange chest. And sometimes you'll find a boss guarding more than one treasure chest. Random dungeons are not just generated randomly, they actually appear randomly in the world, hence the name. Look for a green portal entrance for RDGs that are designed for 1 or 2 players. If you have a complete group with you, including a tank and a healer, you can find a blue portal entrance for a group random dungeon. These are usually too hard for 1 or 2 people to complete by themselves. Now it's important to understand that the entrance to a random dungeon will automatically close once somebody has gone inside. When you go in, a timer starts, and if nobody else goes in during the timer, the entrance will vanish. You'll still be inside battling mobs and looting treasure, but this means that nobody else can join you and help you out, or come in and try to compete with you. But until the entrance is closed, any number of people can go in. We call it a solo dungeon because it's designed to be doable by just one person. and the amount of loot that it awards is appropriate for about one person. That doesn't mean that other people can't come in and compete with you. So this is why you want to stick to random dungeons that are in blue or yellow zones if you don't want to risk being killed and looted by other players. The timer for the portal to close is just 60 seconds in blue and yellow zones. In red and black zones, it's 90 seconds to allow more time for someone to come in and murder you. You may eventually find or purchase dungeon maps that create a special random dungeon with advanced mobs and slightly improved loot. These dungeon entrances don't spawn until you use the map, and the entrance is invisible to anyone outside your party for the first 15 minutes, so you can get there first. Now let's talk about open world dungeons. Open world dungeons have fixed entrances that you can see on the world map and on the zone map. These dungeons are not instances, meaning any number of players can come and go through the entrance as they please, and you can have as many players in an open world dungeon as you might find in any other zone in the world. These dungeons can be a serious challenge for players who are equipped with level appropriate gear. They're designed specifically for groups of 4 to 6 players working together. But open world dungeons have more treasure chests compared to random dungeons. The chests themselves are smaller, but the loot is as good or better than what you'd find in a solo random dungeon. The mobs you find in these subterranean zones and the loot from the chest is appropriate for the level of the zone that contains their entrance. For example, if you go into an open world dungeon from a T4 zone, then the loot in the treasure chests takes that into consideration. That doesn't mean you won't find any items above tier 4, but it would be less common there. Also, in my experience, actual bosses are pretty uncommon in these places. But if you do find one, like the governor below Trinity Hall, you're in for a fight, and some sweet-ass loot if you survive. Open world dungeons frequently contain entrances to random group dungeons. It's a dungeon within a dungeon like Inception. You would definitely need a full group with a healer to survive one of these. If you hang out near the entrance to an open world dungeon, you'll probably be able to find a pickup group with other players who want to go in and explore. Here again, stick with blue and yellow zones if you want to ensure that you won't be killed and looted by other players. Next up are Hellgates. Hellgates are mini dungeons, quicker than most random or open world dungeons, but there's only one treasure chest at the end, and in addition to demons and bosses, you're going to have to fight a team of enemy players to get to that chest. For more information, check out my video, Why Do I Sense an Evil Presence?, on this channel. Lastly, let's talk about the newest type of dungeon in Albion Online, which is corrupted dungeons. Corrupted dungeons are kind of like a cross between random dungeons and Hellgates. They are randomly generated, and they very often involve PvP. There are 3 types or levels of corrupted dungeons, and the lowest level ones, Hunter difficulty, use Yellow Zone PvP rules. So, in a Hunter corrupted dungeon, you won't be killed and looted, but you can be attacked and knocked down. The greatest things about corrupted dungeons are that you'll only ever have to fight exactly 1 player per dungeon. And they use a separate system called Infamy to boost the amount of loot you receive. Infamy is not related to the reputation system in any way. I hope to do a separate video on corrupted dungeons in the future. But for now, you need at least 800 item power to enter a corrupted dungeon. Look for a split rock with glowing orange light coming out of it in the open world, and good luck. Okay, here's a bonus tip. If you're in almost any dungeon and you decide you want to run back home to mama, you can press the A key to channel a teleportation spell and return to the surface without having to run all the way back. The only caveat is, if you happen to be in a corrupted dungeon, that channel is going to take a long time, you might as well go ahead and finish the dungeon. Check out my other Albion Online FAQ videos with simple answers to your burning questions like these.